right. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to another one of our Shopify OT sessions. So we will be talking about setting up returns, how you can create your return rules to make sure you're setting up rules that match your business needs, how you can handle refunds and exchanges, and even utilize store credit, which is a great way of being able to take any kind of returns and use that as store credit so then customers can immediately turn around and place orders with that refunded credit. So let's talk about the front end of the store. So I'll start by showing what a customer would potentially see and how a customer could utilize this service. So you're a merchant, you're selling items in your store, a customer is going to buy something from you, and once it's been fulfilled and once it's been delivered, they may want to do a return. Maybe it's something like the size is wrong, or they want to exchange it for a different item or something like that. Shopify lets this process be facilitated quite easily utilizing their self-return rules. So what that means is that a customer would log into your store, and this is the demo store that I'm showing right now that we've got set up, and they would go to their account area. So when they click into their account area, they would see their order history. And then depending upon how the rules are set up, you could say, I'm going to allow any order, that's within the last 30 days or 10 days or 15 days or whatever your specific business rule is, you're going to allow the customer to request and initiate a return. So I'm going to look at this item here, for example, that was ordered on February 18th, and I click on it, and you'll see that this item that we ordered was some coffee and a shirt. But what I really want to show is this link that's right here. So you have the ability to turn on these requests, these return requests, and allow the customer to initiate the return. And so the customer can then click on this particular link, and now they can start the process of saying, hey, I would like to request a return, and for whatever the reason might be. So let's say, for example, we're looking at the shirt, right? Because that's kind of a standard thing. So maybe they've clicked on the shirt, and they realize, you know what, I actually need a different size. I've got a wrong size. So they could click on the shirt to initiate the return. They can come here and say, it's, too small. Maybe they want to do a different option. They can add a note here, wrong size. So you can let the customer choose a reason and put some additional information. And then, because we have this return request on, they could click in here and say, I want to do a return request. And so now the customer has initiated a return right from the Shopify interface, and they can do it right from within their customer account area based upon the rules that you set up. And so what this does is it doesn't automatically give them a return, right? It doesn't immediately give them any kind of money or anything at all like that. It starts a workflow. It starts Shopify's native return workflow. So for this particular order, you'll see that we've initiated this return request, and you'll see that it says here that your return is being reviewed, right? So it's not saying you've got a return yet, but it is being reviewed. And so that's the workflow that basically happens. So if we jump over to the administration side for this particular site, and we click into an order, we can see right off the bat that this order here has a return request. So you as the merchant are going to get a notification that says a customer has requested a return for this particular order. So if I was to click into this order, you can see the information here as to what it is that they've done the request for. This particular item, this return here, they want to do a return on it. And then you, as part of the workflow, are going to decide if you actually want to grant that request. So you'll see here that there's review a request. So the request that happens from the customer for the return, again, is really kicking off this workflow that you see here. So now you as the merchant would click into it, and now you can start reviewing all the information about the return, why they said they wanted to return it, what they wanted to do. And in this case, someone could have said, hey, I would like a different size, so, my note that I put in there, maybe should have said, hey, can I exchange it for a different size or something like that, right? But you can look at all the information that you've set up here, and you can decide whether or not you're going to approve or you're going to decline this return request from the actual customer. And depending on whichever choice you do here, if you approve it or you decline it, this workflow is now going to kick off a note, an email back to the customer, and let them know what you've decided, and then you can go from there, right? So in this case, if I was to approve this request, I can say, okay, we're going to do a simple, in this case, I'm just doing a simple return. And then there's rules. We'll talk about the rules in a moment. Or this could potentially even be an exchange. So if the customer maybe requested an exchange, you could actually click in here and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to actually exchange this product for maybe the large size instead, because they figured out that the issue is that this shirt is the wrong size. It's too small. So let's get them a bigger, an exchange shirt in this case. And what you'll notice here is on the right-hand side, Shopify is showing you how your exchange or your return affects the money, right? Because the customer has already paid for something, so you're either going to have to refund them or you're going to have to just do a straight exchange, right? This tells you here what's happening. So in this case, a straight exchange is not going to expect any kind of a refund for the customer. You're not expecting any kind of an additional payment. You can just do this exchange. If I was to delete this exchange, you would now see that Shopify is recognizing that, okay, well, you're not doing an exchange, you're just setting up a return. So if that's the case, what's going to happen here? Like, what do you want to do? So you can then approve this return, and you'll notice that there's going to be a refund that's going to have to be refunded to the particular customer for this $21. And then that amount, that $21, you can decide whether or not it goes back to like their credit card or even conceivably giving them store credit. But you also have a couple of choices too, right? You can decide, well, if there was a shipping fee, should we include or exclude that shipping fee from the refund, and whether or not you charge a stocking fee. Now, in the rules, which we'll get to in a moment, you can set all this up ahead of time. So a customer is already going to know, is there a stocking fee? Is there a return fee or anything and all like that? Your business, you'll decide what it is you guys want to do. But ultimately, you can see what steps need to happen here. So in this case, there's no shipping involved. There's no restocking fee. So the expectation here is that there's going to need to be a refund to this particular customer for $21. And so we're still inside of that Shopify workflow. So I can decide and say, okay, maybe it's too small, they don't want it, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to approve this return request. Now, keep in mind, this is still just a request, right? We haven't actually initiated a return or anything. We're just approving the workflow. Because at this point in time, the customer still needs to return the actual item, right? Right now, they're just requesting, saying, hey, I would like a return. But they haven't necessarily returned anything yet. So right now, you're just deciding whether or not you're going to kick off the next step of the workflow, which is saying, okay, we approve that this return can happen. Now we need you to send back the product so we can actually do the refund. So in this case, again, it's a workflow, it's a process. We've now moved on to the next step, which is the return is in progress. So I know it sounds a little bit complicated. If anybody has any questions about what you just saw, kind of let me know. But remember, we're now in the return workflow. The customer so far has made a request saying, I would like to return this particular product. You as the store merchant have now accepted that request. You're saying, okay, sounds good. We will allow you to return it. And then now you'll notice that this particular order is in the state that says return in progress. And this state, may last for, who knows, a week or two or whatever the case may be, depending on how long it takes to get the product back. So you may be sitting in this return progress state for a while. And so if we go back to your list of orders, you'll notice that this particular order is return in progress. So that lets you know it is now in that second stage of the process. And you could have a bunch of different orders, in a different stages, of course. But this is basically saying, I, as the merchant, am waiting for this return to show up. And like we said, could be a week, could be days, who knows, for the product to get back. But you don't want to move to the next step in a standard return process until you get the product back. Hopefully most customers are honest and it isn't a problem. But I'm sure you can see how potentially you could be opening yourself up to maybe some kind of a scam or some kind of a ploy to get free merchandise. If somebody says, I want a return, and you just approve it and you give them a refund and you don't wait for the merchandise to come back to your store, you could open yourself up to some liability there. So that's why it's really important that you don't go to the next stage until you confirm that this product that they're saying they're going to return has actually arrived back at your warehouse or your distribution center or wherever it is you told them to send the product. So let's fast forward and let's pretend that that is what has happened. You have now checked with your shipping and warehouse team, and they're saying, yep, that product from Joe user here has arrived. We have it in the warehouse. So now your merchandising team is going to come back to this order, and you're now going to process the return. So that's the next stage in this system. You're going to confirm that you got it, and you're going to hit process. And so that's now the next stage where you're deciding to say, okay, we are going to confirm that this product is in-house. You're going to decide, do you want to restock it? Do you not want to restock it? Typically, you're going to look at the product, make sure it's in good condition. If it's a shirt or something like that, you guys can decide what your process looks like, but you can decide to restock the item at your particular location, and that will increase the availability to purchase it again. And then over here on the right-hand side, which is the last step, you're going to decide in terms of what you're going to do. Now, I realize I'm kind of in the way here, but you're going to issue the refund to the customer, and then you can decide what that refund looks like. So if I look here, you could say whatever their original payment was, or as I mentioned earlier, this really cool feature, which is store credit. So you could take this $21, give the customer store credit, and they can now immediately use that store credit and do a purchase. And that store credit could be online. If you have a retail store, they could also use it in their point of sale. So this is a really cool thing to try to keep that momentum of the customer shopping at your store by utilizing the store credit. If you selected original payment, which in a lot of situations is like a credit card or something like that, then the customer is going to have to wait for that standard period to get that refund coming back to their store. So that might be a little bit more kind of disinclined to shop. Okay, well, I don't have my return yet. I don't have the refund yet. I have to wait for that to get issued to the credit card. So that's why if they're willing to accept the store credit, you're probably going to get a lot better return of people shopping right away. And then the last step here, you're going to send them a notification. I'll kind of move out of the way here. You can send them a notification, which means they'll get an email. And then the last step you need to do here is processing that return. And so in this case, I'm just going to refund them the cash. This was a point of sale order. So we're just going to say we're going to refund them back to their original payment. And you click on it to actually process that return. So you'll see now the order has switched to a return state. It's now been refunded back. Money has gone back to the customer. You can see if we scroll down here to the bottom, it's showing you exactly what has happened. This was the original order. They returned one of the items, just this one item. There's still this other item that was on the original order. Here's the refund that was created just for that $21.95. And there's a very specific return request and return item that you can see here. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see a complete history of everything that happened on that particular order. So in this case, you got an order with a partial refund, and it was all handled through the workflow inside of Shopify's native system. So this makes it really easy to deal with returns. Without this feature, if you don't have this feature turned on, then maybe you're going to get an email from a customer, or again, depending on what your store looks like, maybe they're going to call or chat or who knows. This really allows you to turn on the ability to have customers do refunds and handle it right from the site. So how do you actually set this up, right? How do we actually configure this? Let's look at that next. But before we do, I'd like to pause for a second. If anybody has any questions about what you just saw, what we just went over was what the customer sees, right? So we started with what is the customer's process and responsibility in that returns. I will mention one thing that's important to note that oftentimes kind of trips up some people when it comes to doing these returns is that you can't initiate a return if the product has not been fulfilled. So in a non-point of sale environment, right, in a standard online store environment, somebody's going to buy something and then you are going to ship it to that particular customer. So during that window where the order has been placed but has not yet been fulfilled, the customer will not be able to initiate a return. So I just want to mention that because that is a very common kind of issue that trips up some people Well, they'll say, wait a minute, why isn't the return working? Why can't the customer do the return? And the first thing we'll ask is well, have they received the product yet, right? Has it actually been delivered? So if you think about it from a common sense perspective, of course, right, the product has to first be delivered, then they have to decide whether they're going to keep it or they're going to reject it to initiate the actual return. So something to remember, because that is a very common thing that sometimes kind of trips up people from the return perspective. Okay, moving on. So how do we set this up, right? How do you go to your store and say, I want to do this return process that I just showed you. I want to configure this. What do you need to do? So we're going to go down to the settings here, right? So this is your Shopify administration. You're going to go into your settings, and all of this is going to be handled from within here, which is the customer accounts. I know it seems a little bit kind of a funny place to have it, but this is where you're going to initiate everything. And the reason it's in this customer accounts area is because one of the rules for being able to use these customer returns is that you must be on this new customer accounts. Now, I use the term new a little bit loosely because this is, probably for the last couple years now, these new customer accounts has been Shopify's default native way of doing things. But on the off chance, if you come into this customer area here and you're still on a legacy, if you have a little bit of an older store, if you're on these legacy customer accounts, you will not be able to do and use the returns, that process that I just showed you that we just went through. You're not going to be able to do it with this legacy. You're going to have to switch to this new customer account, which is the default. So if you've got a store that you've spun up recently, this is going to be the default, so it won't be a problem, but it is something to just test. Like if you're trying to initiate and you try to set this up and it's not working, double check that you're not on the legacy accounts. If you are on these new customer accounts, what you're going to end up seeing, what you're going to end up getting is this thing right here, which says self-service return rules. And this is what we just did a second ago, right? By turning this feature on, you now have the ability to go in and create the rules and create the settings for your particular store that's going to let the customer do what we just saw a second ago. So let's click into this return rules area and set up the rules for your store and for your business. So what we're going to want to do is click into the policies here, and then you'll notice that I've got the return rules turned on, and it's showing us a summary of what I've configured for my particular store. Now, you may have different policies for your store, of course. You may want to handle it different ways, but this is how I have my particular store set up. And I can adjust these rules by clicking here in this manage area. So if I click into manage, I now have the ability to, if I click into this manage area here, I now have the ability to click into here and set up the rules and manage the rules for my store specifically. So what kind of rules can I set up, right? What are the rules for these particular returns? So the first thing you're going to do is the return window. So what does that mean? That means if I placed an order, let's say on February 1st, how long do I have before the system's going to say, sorry, the order is too old and you can't return it? And you can decide by setting up these rules. 14 days, 30 days, 90 days, unlimited. Maybe you want your own kind of custom number here. It's up to you to decide. I wouldn't say there's any better or worse. It's really up to your business decision. Also depends on what kind of products you sell. Maybe certain products you want it has to be kind of a shorter window or a longer window. You decide what it is. But basically, whatever setting you do here is going to affect on the front end what we just saw a moment ago. So let's pretend somebody placed an order on February 1st, and I had my return window set to 14 days. So from the moment that product was ordered, you're going to have 14-day window that's going to say that return link that you saw when we went to the administration side. So if I go to the customer side, so let's pop back to the second. And that's this link right here where somebody can return request, where they can make the request. It is only going to be active for 14 days or for 30 days or for 90 days, right? You have to decide how long your window is to allow them to do the return. Once that time has lapsed, that link is no longer going to be there and they will not be able to initiate the return. So this gives you a little bit of a control for the return system to ensure that, again, people are abiding by whatever rules you've set up for your particular business and for your particular products. The next thing we have to consider is the return shipping cost. So who is going to pay for that return? Now, in my case, and this is a business decision, right? It's a lot of companies decide different ways that you want to do this. Some bigger companies offer free returns, right? That's a really big incentive that's going to make customers want to shop with you, knowing that, especially with things like apparel or clothing, where sometimes the sizing isn't perfect. If you tell the customer, we will give you free returns, they're probably going to be more inclined to purchase with you because they feel confident that once they get it, if it's not quite right, they're not going to have to then spend more money and more shipping to potentially exchange or do a different size. But again, it's really going to depend upon your business decision. So you could either say, you know what, in our business rules, we want the customer to pay for the shipping. Or you can say, you know what, we're going to do a free shipping where the shipping, you're not going to have to pay for shipping. We're going to provide you with a shipping label. That's what you just saw a moment ago, where it was asking for a shipping label that we were providing to the customer. Or you can say, you know what, we're going to charge you for shipping. It's just going to be a certain rate. And so you could charge a flat rate, and maybe you can come in here and say, okay, shipping is always going to be $5, whatever the case might be, right? So I jumped out of here, right? So you can decide whatever it is that you want. Again, it's up to you and your specific business rules. So for sake of just setting this up, let's pretend we did a $5, shipping rate. Next is a restocking fee. So sometimes there is a process involved. When something comes in, somebody has to manage it. You have to potentially, restock it, send it to another warehouse. So you can decide whether or not you are charging a restocking fee for that return. So you might say, hey, there's like a 2% fee that we charge if you want to do a return. From a business perspective, right? Some customers may be a little bit not happy to know that they've got to pay for shipping and there's a restocking fee. Might not be the best image depending on what your products are. It's up to you. It's what you need to decide. Now, you're running a business, right? You have to deal with your merchandise. You have to deal with shipping fees and stocking fees. You might not be able to give everything away for free. But from a customer's perspective, if you don't charge a restocking fee and if you make everything free, they're going to be a lot happier as a customer. And again, the chances are they're going to want to buy from you. And you'll want to put a banner or something on your site. You want to create your rules that say, hey, free shipping for returns, no stocking fee, right? And if you promote that and market that, chances are the customers are going to say, oh, well, hey, this is a great merch and I really want to buy from them because they really have the customer in mind. Now, you've got all these rules, but you also have a lot of products in your store, and there might just be a certain set of products or a certain collection of products where you say, you know what, even though we let you return a bunch of things, there's certain items that just cannot be returned. And so that's what this section here is all about, where you've got those final sale items. So there might be certain things like, there's even some kind of legality around certain things like cosmetics or food items or things like that. So depending on what your store sells or what it is that you've got, you could select either a very specific product or an entire collection and say, hey, if this product falls inside of this collection, and I'm just going to pick a random collection here so that you can see, maybe we're going to say, hey, any jewelry product, we're just not going to accept the return, right? Because we don't know what's happening with the jewelry, whether it's, you've done something to it or who knows, right? You can decide whatever it is, but you can pick an entire collection or you can pick just a very specific product. And what that basically means is regardless of what your return rules say, regardless of anything, this product or these products cannot be returned for any reason whatsoever. So depending on what you sell, that could be a very important thing to make sure your rules match the products that are in your store. So once you've set up your rules, once you've figured out what it is that you want to do, you hit save. And now this return system, this return rules are now activated inside of your system. And you can see the summary of everything here. And so everything that I just showed you a moment ago from the customer's perspective, this is now turned on. It is now active. And the customers can start doing the return and you can start doing the process that we just saw a moment ago. One thing you'll want to notice, though, as I mentioned before, is that once you create your return rules, you'll notice that this little section kind of popped up here, and that's going to be your return policy. And this is going to be extremely important. You're going to want to let your customers know what your policy is. You're going to want to tell them, like, hey, you only have 14 days, you only have 10 days, 30 days, like whatever the number is. And so this policy is going to be extremely important, and you're going to want to have this on your site. And so Shopify has done this really great thing where it takes all the information that you set up in your rules, and it takes the text and everything that goes along with it and now helps create this policy for you. So this is a really great way that says, look at the rules, look at everything that I've done, and I'm now going to create this text and everything that goes along with it, and lets you, if you want to go in and maybe make some changes, you can literally go in here and type and, make some edits if you want to here, and then you can save your return policy. And so now you have a return policy that you've been created, that Shopify has helped you create automatically, and it's now linked into your site. So if you go back over to your store, you can now have that return policy. And I think I've got it at the bottom here. You can decide where it is that you want to put it. But let's say I'm buying something here. I'm going to take this particular product here. I'm going to add it to my shopping cart. And if I go to my shopping cart, this might be a great place on this page here to put that return policy so somebody knows what it looks like. In the standard Shopify checkout, I'll go to the checkout area, the return policy is always down here at the bottom, right? So this is that information that we just put in gets linked into here. So this is automatically generated from what we just showed you inside of Shopify and automatically gets added to the checkout. But you can, of course, decide to put it other places. Maybe you want to add it here to a little bit of theme design. You can decide where that goes and what that looks like. You'll definitely want to show people that policy because you don't want somebody to be surprised if they're ordering a certain product that can't be returned, or maybe the window's too short or too long. Who knows? That is a business decision that you'll have to figure out. But once you've basically set this up, you've got the return rules set up, you've got the policy set up, you're now good to go, right? You've got everything set up inside of your accounts. And at any point in time, the last thing I'll mention is that, let's say for some reason you maybe need to turn off returns, or the store is closed, or who knows, whatever the case might be. All you have to do is just click this little thing here and it says, hey, do you want to turn it off? So now it's going to turn off the returns. So it's not going to forget any of the settings or anything that you've done, but it's just going to say, hey, for whatever reason, you need to turn off your returns. So none of the links, none of the buttons, or everything that are on the site, none of that is going to be active because you have it turned off. And again, at any point in time, you can turn it back on again. You see that's going to say everything is back on. And if you check your rules, all of your previous information that you set up is already there waiting for you. So you don't have to redo anything. You don't have to rewrite anything. It's all set up. So from a returns and exchange perspective, that's the workflow, right? We showed you what the customer sees on the front end. We showed you what you see on the back end, and how you can do a refund, how you can do a return, how you could return the money or the refund back to their original payment, or you could potentially use store credit. Really great, powerful feature. The workflow saves a lot of time. You don't have to deal with weird customer service issues or emails or phone calls. You can have all of it handled right from within Shopify. So it's a really, really great feature. I would definitely suggest using it if you're not using it. And hopefully from what you just saw, it's very easy to also set up. So I'll pause here for a second. If anybody has any questions about anything you just saw, or you want me to kind of go over anything at all again, definitely let me know. Anything specifically about returns, of course, let me know. But otherwise, it's pretty easy, right? Everything you just saw, it's really easy to set up. You just go into your settings, set up your rules, you activate it, and it's live in your store. And like I said, the one piece that always trips people up is, remember, you've got to fulfill a product in order for it to be returned. Okay, well, that's our session then for today. I want to remind everybody that we do have another session every Friday. So next week, we're going to be talking about smart collections. So how do you create collections? How can you do it smartly? So utilizing tags, utilizing meta fields, utilizing all these little cool rules and everything. This is definitely something that is very, very helpful and something you're definitely going to want to use. As always, we're always here to help. So if anybody wants to utilize and work with Sunrise Integration, come over to our site, pop over to our Shopify Success Plans. We offer all kinds of different plans to help support your site, grow your site, enterprise level plans with all kinds of different features, right? We can come in, help audit your site, do a bunch of great things like that. So if you need some help, if you want to do anything at all and work with our team, definitely reach out. I want to thank you all for joining our session here. Really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be talking about the Shopify collections. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday.